The countries of the BRICS bloc, representing Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are holding their 15th summit in Johannesburg, South Africa this August. This is widely considered to be one of the most important meetings since the bloc was formed in 2009 as a loose group of developing countries in the global south, along with Russia. And South Africa was actually added. It was originally BRIC, and South Africa was added to the alliance in 2011. And in the past decade, the direction of the BRICS has shifted in a lot of ways. And it's become more and more of a political organization in addition to seeking economic integration and cooperation of developing countries. And in many ways, BRICS today is at a kind of crossroads. There is an intense debate going on inside the bloc about what direction it should go in. Should it be a bloc that is focused on simply seeking economic integration, or should it specifically be the global South's vehicle to challenge the West, the colonial powers represented by the G7? The group of seven represents the imperialist countries that develop their economies through colonialism. That is the United States, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Canada, and also Japan. So it's the Western powers plus Japan. And what we now see is a debate in the BRICS, and China in particular is pushing for the BRICS to be a challenge directly to the hegemony of the G7. Russia also wants BRICS to play more of an activist role, speaking out in defense of sovereignty and independence of these countries, challenging the hegemony of the West. However, on the other side, we've seen reports that India, which has an alliance with the United States and is very friendly with the West, India is very hesitant, and it doesn't want the BRICS to be seen as an activist organization representing global South nationalist movements speaking out against imperialism. Instead, India is trying to balance its relations and maintain very good relations and alliance with the West, but also maintain relations with other countries like Russia, which is one of India's most important trading partners and provides it with oil and gas and wheat and fertilizer and military technology. And we've also seen reports that Brazil, which is very afraid that the United States could attack it and impose sanctions on it and try to sponsor another coup, because the United States in 2016 and 2018 supported two political coups d'etat against the Workers' Party government in Brazil. So Brasilia is being very careful and is trying not to anger the United States very much. So what we're seeing essentially is this debate going on in BRICS with different leaders, some of them trying to walk on eggshells not to upset the West, whereas China and Russia are saying very clearly, this should be an organization that speaks firmly on behalf of the Global South's independence. We are not going to tolerate bullying and the hegemony of the Western imperial powers. This also comes at a very important historical moment in which the Western colonial economies are no longer the biggest economies in the world. China, when you measure its economy at purchasing power parity, which is the best way to measure GDP, China overtook the US economy in 2017 and is the largest economy on earth. And if you take the BRICS countries together, their economies represent nearly 1/3 of global GDP, measured at purchasing power parity, around 32%, whereas the G7 economies represent less than 30%. So the BRICS economies together are now larger than the G7 economies. And of course, the Western economies in the G7 have been very stagnant for years and are not growing significantly, whereas the BRICS economies are growing rapidly. So there is a lot of potential in the future for BRICS to become a major economic powerhouse on the global stage. But of course, this is why the divisions within the BRICS are important to understand, because there is a possibility that there could be countries that leave BRICS. We already see some of these divisions emerging. And of course, the Western powers are very much trying to encourage more and more splits. Now, this also comes at a time when the humanitarian organization Oxfam reported that the G7 countries owe the Global South $13 trillion in debt. And when I say $13 trillion from this Oxfam report, that is money that the Western powers and Japan promised the Global South. It's not money that they should give the Global South in reparations, which is probably many tens of trillions of dollars more, hundreds of trillions of dollars, considering that the British Empire siphoned out more than $45 trillion just from India over nearly 200 years of colonialism. But I'm not even just talking about the money that the Global South is owed in reparations by the colonial powers. Oxfam estimates that the G7 countries promised the Global South that they would give aid and support, and in particular, support monetarily to help with climate change policies so these countries can move toward greener technology and energy. And yet the Western powers violated their promises. They lied, and they still have not paid $13 trillion to the nations of the Global South. This is exactly why an organization like the BRICS is so important for these countries in the Global South that are seeking new economic and political representation so they can no longer be bullied and controlled by the Western powers that colonize them and still maintain neo-colonial policies. And it's also why there is a deep debate going on inside the BRICS itself about the future direction of the bloc.